Good evening, Razorback Nation. We are back with our 7th episode of the Razorback Recap, your go-to destination for the latest updates on Arkansas baseball and softball action. Join us as we break down the thrilling moments, highlight standout performances, and discuss the strategies that shape these games. And as you can tell, we've got Seth back this week, and we're also joined by former Razorback John Bolton that jumped on with us this week to talk about Arkansas baseball. And before we get started, Razorback Recap is brought to you by Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. Check them out today if you're in Northwest Arkansas, and check out Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get their Scarlet Letter in all their various flavors. And it's great to have you on, John. It was a nice weekend for Arkansas baseball. You know, at this rate, 4 weekends into the SEC baseball season, we're going to have to get new brooms by the end of the season at the rate we're sweeping here. So, before we jump in here, you know, how's life going for you? What do you got going on right now? Let them know what you're doing.
Life's good. I'm in Little Rock right now doing medical device sales, so post-baseball life. I guess it kind of hit me a few months ago that I wasn't actually playing anymore. But, you know, it's been fun watching the guys this year and supporting them. I don't think I've missed an inning so far. I don't think I've missed a pitch. But I do miss it a lot, but I'm enjoying the work life for sure. And I also give lessons at Performance here. It's a baseball facility here in Little Rock, so I'll do that on the side. It's kind of my way of just staying around the game.
That's awesome, man.
Awesome to hear. Yeah.
My bad, Caleb. It's good to kind of stay in those types of hobbies and keep your skills sharp, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah. Just in case a pro team wants to come by and sign me.
You never know, man. You never know. Stranger things have happened.
After last year, I was talking to my dad about it, and he was like, "Man, you sure you don't want to sign or anything?" I was like, "Well, apparently pro teams don't want to invest in a 24-year-old 5'8" white kid." So, but I moved on from it, and I'm good. But I definitely do miss it.
I was about to say that's it. It's one of the harder parts is kind of accepting that and kind of moving on with that I guess part of your life that's taken up so much, and then into like you said, that non-baseball life, but you know, like you said, staying pretty close, not missing an inning here. So that's good to see. And who knows, maybe down the road you can get into coaching.
Yeah, maybe. You know, I've had some people come up and ask me just to kind of around the area if I would want to help coach their 12U, 13U team or whatever. And then I've had other people like, "Hey, man, I would push that off for as long as you can because dealing with the parents is horrible." And they were like, "Just keep doing the lessons, doing the one-on-one, two-on-one lessons." That's what I like because I feel like if I'm trying to coach a whole team with, I don't know, 15, 16 kids, it's kind of hard to actually teach. Do you know what I mean? And when I get a kid, I'm doing mainly infield lessons. So I get a lot of shortstops, a lot of second basemen. I've got them one-on-one for an hour. They can actually learn something. And I can actually teach what I know. So that's what I enjoy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, hey, like you said, we were talking about before the show, you know, we're going to take a break here and talk Arkansas baseball and softball, you know, get away from some of that basketball news where, you know, it's like we mentioned before the show started here, you know, we still got to remember you have an Arkansas baseball team that is number one in the country and, you know, just came off another SEC sweep, their third of the SEC season with 4 series in. And, you know, we started this one, you know, Hagen Smith came out and, you know, is continuing to do Hagen Smith things, not his best outing. And that's weird to say, even though he came out and had, you know, went 6 innings, 105 pitches. So a high on pitch count for him this season, 4 hits, 2 runs, 4 walks, and 11 strikeouts. So 11 strikeouts, and it's not your best outing. You know, that's something.
It's pretty good.
And, you know, Will McIntyre, you know, Iron Man that you can count on in any role you need him, coming in for 2 2/3 of an inning, 51 pitches, allowing 1 hit, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. And then as we call him around here, your chess piece in Stone Hewlett, 1/3 of an inning, that final out, coming in 6 pitches, getting that final out. Yeah, this pitching staff's been dominant this season. What are you seeing? You know, I know being with the team last year, you know, several of these guys. So, you know, is this something you expect out of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pitching staff is just unreal this year. You've got so much depth, especially with some of these freshmen that are coming in that can immediately make an impact. And we had a good pitching staff last year too. It's not like it was, you know, way better than last year. We just had to deal with a lot of injuries and that kind of thing. But honestly, not the pitching staff, but on the offensive side, I don't even think we're playing really our best baseball right now, which is kind of a bright spot. Because obviously the pitching staff has taken us mainly where we are right now. But the offense is doing enough right now. But 1 through 9 of that lineup is so talented. And once they really start getting going and putting teams in the dirt, like we all know they can, it's going to be scary. I was feeling like just watching college baseball last year and playing in it, I feel like there was probably 4 teams that any of them could have won the Natty. It was Arkansas, Florida, Wake Forest, and LSU. I thought those 4 teams were just so good. And this year, just watching around the country, I don't think there's really anybody close to Arkansas. I don't think there's anybody on Arkansas's level. That's just my honest opinion. Maybe I'm not watching enough teams. But, I mean, obviously Texas A&M is really good. Tennessee looks really good. Clemson. But our pitching staff, man, it's hard to beat.
Yeah, I was going to throw that Clemson name out there. They're about the only other ones that maybe have looked consistently explosive enough to maybe compete with us in a 3-game series. If it's not in a 3-game series format, it's kind of like in the Omaha style. I mean,
Right.
We might could have some issues there, but overall, I think we match up pretty well with just about anybody for a lot of the reasons you said. I want to hit on something quickly as well. You said that 1 through 9 position so deep, so talented. I would almost venture to say like 1 through 13. I mean, obviously you're not running 13 guys out there,
yeah,
but dude,
I only said 1 through 9 because 9 guys.
That's how you can fit. Yeah, but man,
but we all know the bench. There are guys that aren't really getting to play very much right now. I know are really good.
Yeah, 100%. Guys like Jason Jones come to mind that can really hit the ball well. That you've got other guys that have been hitting even better, keeping him kind of on the. Peyton Holt's another one, because Nolan Souza has come out and just been a freakazoid of a freshman. I mean, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but he had a heck of a weekend.
Yeah, kid does not look like a freshman.
No, he's a grown man. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's true. And, you look at this pitching staff, with just their dominance, it's insane because if you look at the NCAA stats overall of college baseball, Arkansas leads in team ERA with I think it's a 1.5 or 1.7. And then you look at the next leading team, they're nearly a full point higher in their ERA. So it's really insane what this team's doing this year. And especially with Hagen Smith, he's set to break some records for himself. I was looking at his strikeout, this year compared to last year. He finished last year with I believe 102, and he's already at 83 through, just the first half, first quarter of the season, if you will. So, and, I think he's really locked in after that one bad game at the beginning of the season. And, a lot of people, I guess, questioned him from that, but he's really turned that around. That breakout performance down in Arlington, and then really hasn't looked back since. But like you said, the bats have been one of those pieces that they're steadily getting better, and I don't think they're at where
they haven't even peaked yet.
That's what I was getting at. I feel like the offense is just doing enough right now. Like kind of like this past weekend, going with Ole Miss, was it 3-3 in the 7th or something? I feel like that's happened a lot this year when it's kind of tight, going into the middle innings, late innings of the game, and then we'll just blow it up. That's what good teams do. So obviously our offense is good and doing enough, but kind of like you said, I don't think we've peaked yet on the offensive side, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, that's very true. And so you look at it here, Arkansas, with this first game, it was 9-1 in SEC play for the first time in program history, but you go ahead and add that out to 11-1. Which is insane for how traditionally good this team is to begin with, but to, keep getting new levels of high of program records and program history. And it's just, I'm going to be interested to see as they can develop throughout the rest of the season. And, we'll get to the offensive side of this things. Ole Miss started this game with a pair of runs in the top of the 3rd, but, that was it for them in this game. Arkansas countered back with a run of their own, with an RBI ground out by Jared Spraglot. And then the action really got started in the 6th, where you had back-to-back walks with Stovall and McLaughlin. And then who else other than Vahiva Aloy coming to the plate and hitting the go-ahead 3-run home run, his team leading 7th of the season. And then Spraglot came in and capped off the 4-run inning with a solo shot of his own. and Arkansas wins this one 5-2. So, is there any specific guys that kind of are standing out to you as far as on the offensive side of things on what they're doing right now?
Oh yeah, I mean Peyton Stovall, obviously, he's battled a lot of injuries and been put down a lot. So just seeing him bounce back and seeing what all he's done, it looks like he's never missed a beat. So I'm really happy and glad to see him have all this success he's having right now. And then, I mean, I could say everyone in the lineup because everybody's doing well, everybody's doing their part. But Vahiva Alloy, to me, he's really starting to pick it up and he's starting to look really comfortable at the plate. Because obviously at the beginning of the season he was struggling a little bit, and all the fans freak out or whatever. But I saw that kid take a couple swings in the fall, and I was like, pretty good. And I've only heard great things about him from the fall, so I knew he was going to pick it up at some point. So seeing him doing what he's doing right now is awesome.
I think Vahiva, I saw a stat. I think obviously didn't have the best start to the season, but really kind of started taking off about 10, 12 games ago. I think over the last 10 or 11 games, he's batting like 412 or something like it. It's well over 400 over the last 10, 11 games.
Yeah.
With several home runs across that stretch. And he is really kind of turning it on at the right time. I hope he can kind of keep up that pace for the rest of the year. And it doesn't look – it seems like he's gotten better as the pitching has gotten better.
Oh, yeah.
Which that does happen from time to time. You face a lot of those non-conference teams pitching slow or funky, and you're just not used to it. And then you get back to what you're kind of traditionally used to, some higher competition. You actually do better, which is counterintuitive, but I'm sure you know plenty about that. But I think that's definitely happened for him.
Yeah, and I've noticed his play discipline has gotten a ton better. His at-bats look a whole lot better. He's having a lot of quality ABs. He's taking his walks. He's hitting his pitch, and that's what good hitters do. So I'm glad he's starting to really get comfortable and starting to get it rolling.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this coming in, transferring into the program here. What is it like for a guy like him to come in and, is there a sense of a little bit of pressure on yourself to come in and perform, at a program like Arkansas? He came in from Sacramento State to a packed out Ballin Walker in the first series of the season against JMU. So to come in, is there any type of pressure to come out and perform in front of, a packed out stadium, which maybe you're not necessarily used to?
Yeah, I mean, coming from, because obviously he came from Sac State, definitely a smaller school. I came from Austin Peay, definitely a smaller school. And just going out first game, I mean, I can't speak on his terms, but just for me personally, because we opened up in Arlington against Texas. And, in my thought process, I'm like, okay, this isn't really a home game, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really know what to expect. We step out on the field for warm-ups. I didn't even have my cleats on yet. And there was already 10,000 starting to do the hog call. I'm looking around like, oh, my God. And I remember we were going out for In-N-Out, and they start the hog call again. And I started to get like chills and a little bit of butterflies. And Kendall Diggs looks at me. He's like, welcome to it. But, I mean, I had a little bit of butterflies just because I never played in front of that many people, blah, blah, blah. Kind of like you said, Arkansas is a highly touted program. A lot of, fans that care a lot. Following a guy like Jalen Battles too, there's a whole lot on the table. I remember when I first got here in the fall, somebody random asked me, like, oh, what position do you play? I said shortstop. And they're like, oh, good luck filling those shoes. I was like, yeah, thanks. But I knew once we got in that first game, once I touched the baseball, I was going to be fine. And I think like in the first inning, I think ball was hit the stove ball and we turned a double play. After that, I was like, I'm good. So after that, it was kind of like tunnel vision. Crowd didn't really have an effect or butterflies or pressure or anything like that. Just kind of played freely. And I feel like Vahiva, he's definitely in his element right now. So again, I can't speak on his terms, but there definitely is a little bit of a factor of coming into a program like this and performing, because that's what's expected. We're a highly touted program, top 5-3 program in the country every year because we get the best players. And so, I mean, there is a little bit of pressure there, but at the end of the day, once you start playing, everybody's good. So all that really kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you really, like you said, once you kind of come in, get those first jitters out, and Seth, you probably can understand what I'm talking about, and if maybe John, if you've seen it, the Brandon Burlsworth movie, it's almost like that effect where there's that one scene where they're out on the field and he gets to dress out, and they're talking about the hog call, and one of the other players, he was like, "Hey man, I've heard this, hundreds of times," and the guy's like, "Not from down here, you haven't." Talking about being down on the field and actually really understanding it and it being a massive thing. Yeah, I can see where that can send chills, but he's really seemed to find his stride, and I think it's going to continue to get better. And he leads the team in home runs right now, and I think there's a chance that he continues to do that the rest of the season. But he's got some competition from freshmen that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But as we jump into game 2 here, Arkansas wins this one 8-3. This is the second weekend we've seen this kind of reverse of rotation with Mason Molina being your second night guy instead of Brady Tigert. He comes out 4 1/3 innings, 83 pitches, 3 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. You have Cody Frank come in for an inning in the third, 32 pitches, 2 hits, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. Christian Fouch comes in for an inning in the third, 19 pitches with 1 hit. And then Gage Wood comes out, 2 innings, 33 pitches, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. And I know even Dave said after this game, this was the first game he really felt like this was the Gage Wood from last year. He kind of came out and played a little bit of an attitude. And I think it's great to see him kind of getting back to how he was last year. And, this is just going to be yet another bonus for this already deadly bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, getting the Gage Wood from last year. Well, I don't think he's been bad this year at all. But I get what Coach Van Horn is saying, just, with his intensity and, Gage is out there, it's different. He's a bulldog. We love playing behind him and all that. Yeah, just adding that to this pitching staff. I mean, I know there's pitchers right now on the staff that aren't getting to throw very much that are dudes. So just adding, when everybody, like somebody like Christian Fouch has taken a huge step from last year. I'm not saying he was bad last year at all, but he's just taken a step up. He looks really good out there. He looks comfortable. Adding another guy like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's always good to have a deep bullpen. And if you want to make a run for a national championship, you got to have it. You got to have a deep bullpen.
Yeah, I think that's a great take that a lot of people have kind of been slowly talking more and more about, just as a few pieces have gotten healthy and gotten back into even some of the midweek games like Dylan Carter, Ben Bybee,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where even you have freshman Hunter Dietz that he missed part of the beginning of the season due to a cleanup surgery where he was had to miss it. It was kind of a nagging issue where he got that cleaned up and he made his first appearance this past week in the midweek, and so you see I think he's going to only get better as time goes. Like Seth said, you got Dylan Carter back from last year who was doing really well last year before that injury. You got Gabe Geckel, the freshman that's come in and really stepped up and I think surprised a lot of people. And so, these fresh arms are going to be very key, like you said, down the stretch, and, what it takes for a team to not only get to Omaha, but then to, run that tough schedule to, get to the championship game and potentially win it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially somebody like Dylan Carter, who has been rehabbing, working really hard to get back, and obviously he's slowly transitioning, getting back to himself. So just adding another guy like that, and a guy like Ben Bybee, who's been, dealing with a little bit. I think he got sick at the beginning of the year, and that knocked him out for a little bit. But working a guy like that back in, it's just that kind of thing is huge.
Well, and then there's the guy that we haven't even mentioned him yet. That's kind of been another one of those midweek starters is freshman Colin Fisher. He's come in and really looked good as well as a freshman. So, I mean, it's a plethora of talent there in the bullpen for Dave and Matt Hobbs. So, you got to love that. And then as you look at the offensive side of the second game here, Arkansas scored 4 runs in the bottom of the first. And then Kendall Diggs, he comes out, bases loaded walk, followed up by 2 more runs off a single by Jared Spragelot. Freshman Ryder Helfrich, RBI ground out to extend Arkansas's lead 4-1 here. Ole Miss scored 2 more runs to bring the game within 1, but Arkansas turns around and adds 4 unanswered runs with an Aloy sac fly in the fourth that gave Arkansas that 5-3 lead. In the bottom of the sixth, Aloy hit a 2-run homer that put Arkansas up 7-3. And you have Will Edmondson tacking on another run in the seventh off a 2-out RBI single that scored Arkansas's final run of the game, ultimately winning this one 8-3. I mean, it's like you said, there's these guys that are stepping up, and a guy like Ryder Helfrich, the story behind him has been all season with, like Dave's mentioned, he was a guy that they didn't really even expect to get on campus. And then you have a guy or two that, maybe he thought would leave between Parker Rowland and Hudson Polk that stays. And so you have a loaded catching, room. You have Hudson White come in. So that's another good thing. Like, some of these guys maybe aren't getting playing time, but you have the depth there if you do have any health issues. And so, what have you seen out of Ryder's play this year so far as, another one of those freshmen that seems to be having an immediate impact?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm extremely impressed. And just like in that Auburn game, I think it was tied in the top of the ninth, and he was absolutely unloads on a baseball. That's a freshman in a massive spot, and he made it look easy. So obviously I'm super impressed with him, and he and Hudson White are getting a lot of the playing time right now. But Parker Rowland and Hudson Polk on the bench, those are two dudes also. And it's good that Ryder's getting to learn under Parker and Hudson and the other Hudson, just as some older veteran guys that have been through it. So I think that's really good for Ryder just to be around those guys and pick their brain.
I think it's going to set him up pretty well to have a very decorated career potentially at the U of A, with how much impact and talent he already has just as a freshman, him getting some understanding, some wisdom, and then just the development throughout the next couple of years. I mean, he's going to be potentially kind of a generational type catcher, kind of like another McCann or something like that. But he's been fun to watch so far. And I think you got a lot of fans riding around the blonde hair a little bit, even though I've got a bad taste in blonde hair in my mouth from the Oklahoma State boys from a couple years back. But anyway, he's been fun to root for, especially being a freshman. He's looked very solid behind the plate, and he's made some plays back there. Throwing a couple guys out, saving a couple of potential pass balls, just the little things that kind of can sometimes go unnoticed. He's already looking way ahead of the curve, in my opinion. So I've been very pleased with him, no doubt. Yeah,
it's probably the biggest thing I've really been impressed with these freshmen like Souza and Helfrich and Gackle and Fisher, and I'm probably missing a few other names, but those just pop off first thing in my head. But they look like they belong. Like there's no freshman jitters. There's no, there's none of that out there. They already look like junior seniors. So that's one of the biggest things that's impressed me.
Yeah, that's true. And it's like, we were talking about these catchers that are on the roster. It's like, you think about these guys, and maybe some of them, with Hudson White and Helfrich getting a majority of the playing time here, it just, reminds me that, you still got good guys like Parker Rowland and, Hudson Polk sticks out just because, he wasn't getting a ton of playing time, gets to start in the midweek game a few weeks ago, and his first at bat, hits a grand slam. I mean, that's how else can you say, hey, coach, don't forget about me?
Right. I mean, they're doing all they can. And at the end of the day, if you're playing at the University of Arkansas, you're competing against dudes. That's what it is. Only one guy plays. But the good thing, because I know about Hudson Polk and Parker Rowland, those are team guys for sure. They're not sitting on the bench, whining about it or whatever, or sulking. They're doing everything they can. And especially for a younger guy like Ryder Helfrich, again, I think them being good team guys and really showing them the ropes and helping them out, that's what creates a good team.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to the culture, because I remember after that game where Hudson Polk had that grand slam, they did an interview with him, and he actually talked a little bit about that playing time's been tough to come by, and he was actually okay with it just due to how good the team was, and he was happy the team was performing well and that he was doing the best he could to just kind of be the supportive teammate. He said that verbatim, that he was happy to get some playing time, but he wasn't worried about not getting playing time with how fun the team is to be a part of. So it was a great interview with him. For sure, and it definitely speaks volumes.
Yeah, and they're all those guys that, when you get that opportunity, don't miss. And so I was really happy to see Huddy Polk go out there and hit that grand slam. That really fired me up. I remember I was at work, and I was watching on my phone, and when he hit that, I kind of jumped up in the air and gave a fist bump. And some of my coworkers were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Nothing."
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But it fired me up because I know how hard that guy works, and he got that opportunity that day, and he cashed it in. So,
yeah. And then, we'll jump over here to this game 3 where, Arkansas comes out and, gets another sweep here. Arkansas wins this one 7-4, behind Brady Tiger getting the start here. A guy that's, we know the talent's there and kind of struggled a little bit with some command issues the past couple of series that, we know Dave knows how to make those decisions that kind of get guys in the best spots. And, Tiger slid over to kind of that third day guy. In this game, he goes 4 1/3, 82 pitches, 4 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. Jake Faraday comes in 2/3 of an inning, 5 pitches, 1 strikeout. Parker Coyle, 2/3, 12 pitches, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 strikeouts. You got Gabe Geckel, the guy we just talked about, come in at 2 2/3, 35 pitches, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. And then Will McIntyre coming in and closing it out here with the final 2/3, 12 pitches, 1 hit, 1 strikeout. Like we just said, like it's hard to just not say it over and over again how talented this bullpen is that, even after, maybe your starter struggles, and not saying Brady struggled in this game, but like to know that you don't have to worry whenever whoever it is comes in the game, it's almost like there's not really a drop off there. And, Will McIntyre is one of those guys that, I talked about it with Matt Goodhart last week. He seems just like a team guy, but also really much of a competitor that like he's going to do whatever coach asks him to do, but he really wants to win. And I love talking about it last week and how they said that final game of the LSU series, how, and even Dave said it in the post game, his name wasn't on that player card on that final game at first. And then it appeared there. Yeah. And so, I was talking to Matt because he was here whenever he was a redshirt freshman, and you can speak to it too. I feel like that's just the nature of how Will is.
Yeah. No, okay. First off, I'm pretty sure this happened last year too. He and I walked into the facility at the same time, and it was like he threw on a Friday, and I think it was a Saturday or Sunday game. And, like the player card was already posted outside the locker room, and he wasn't on it. And he was like, man, I can throw today, blah, blah, blah. And got a Sharpie and wrote his name in. Maybe I'm dreaming. I don't know, because I talked to his dad this past weekend, and I told him that, and he said he didn't know anything about it. And obviously, when he did it a couple weeks ago or last week, like it blew up. So I was like, I'm pretty sure he did that last year too, but I guess I could be wrong. But yeah, he's just a super competitor. He's definitely one of those guys. Like if I can throw, I'm throwing. Like I don't really care. I just want to win. And,
sorry.
No, you're good. But I remember last year in the regional, we're a lot of injuries, a little thin on pitching. And I think he told Coach Howland and Coach Van Horn, he was like, I don't care how many pitches I throw. I'll throw till my arm falls off. I'm good to go. And that's just the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, you can really just kind of see that from his mentality. But one thing that really has spoken volumes to me just about him, just with his time in Arkansas, is how he's developed. From when he first came in to where he is now, I'm not going to say he looks like a totally different pitcher or anything like that, but he has really come on these last 2 seasons, worked on that cutter type pitch, if you will. And I mean, he's just really kind of coming to his own type of pitcher compared to what he came in as I can't remember if he was a freshman when he came in, but anyways, he's been here for quite some time, and he is really taking advantage of the coaching from Matt Hobbs, and I'm obviously learning from other guys like Kevin Copps, works with him still, I believe. So it's just been kind of fun to see his development, to have him turn into the Swiss Army knife that he is, especially these last 2 seasons. I mean, I'm not sure there's an easier guy on the team to root for with just how many games he can affect coming in, 2-3 games in a row, even if he needed to, and just be almost dominant in each of those outings. It's just really fun to root for him when he's out there on the mound, and he's such a cool guy.
Yeah. Not every team has a guy like Will McIntyre, so I'm glad he's on our team.
No kidding, man.
I was about to say, he's one of those guys that it just amazes me, and that, he can really do anything you need him to, whether that you need him to start, you need him to come in long relief, you need him to come in a key situation and clutch moment and close it out like we've seen him do all of those this year. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better, as we like to call it, Swiss Army knife to, you got it, you get in a pinch. There's Will McIntyre. Let's get him in the game.
Yeah.
Pretty accurate.
And so, this third game is where, we talk about the freshman, Nolan Souza, 2 home runs in this game, a team leading five RBIs, and his second multi-home run game. He, another one of those guys that maybe start off a little slow, but, he's really taking advantage of every at-bat and every playing time that he's got this season. And, his first home run in this game was in the 4th inning, got things started there. And he's hitting right now in the season his line is 357, 471, and 732 through 20 games, and that's with 6 home runs and 18 RBIs. In this game, you have Aloy, 2 for 4, Diggs, 3 for 5, Spraglot. He drew a season-high 3 walks, but let's circle back. Nolan Souza, I mean, from your perspective, this kid's really busted onto the scene, if you will, and this isn't a DH role too, so he's not even out there on defense. He's just stepping up to the plate and hitting dingers, if you will.
Yeah, and obviously Coach Van Horn knows what he's doing. He's putting the right guys in the right spots, and like you said, I mean, he's if I'm not mistaken, a middle infielder. We haven't even really seen him. I think he's gotten out there a couple times earlier in the year, but we've never really seen him get out there consistently yet. And the fact that he's getting in that DH role as a freshman speaks volumes to him, just how talented he is and just getting him the at-bats that he needs right now.
Real quick, too, I think we hit on it a little bit earlier in the year, a few episodes back, but don't ever want to wish ill on anybody, but it's almost one of those situations where Peyton getting that fracture in his foot was almost a blessing in disguise just on finding out a little bit more about your team with some of these freshmen getting some more playing time early on, especially at that second base spot, because that's where Souza, he did get a couple of starts, I believe it was, at second base with Stovall being out. And that's really, I think, when he kind of started showing that, hey, even if I'm not out here on defense, you can put me at that DH role because I'm knocking these balls 110 mile an hour off the bat, even if it's not a home run. I mean, he's hitting hard line drives, hard grounders. I mean, everything that comes off his bat is like 100 plus. It's insane. Yeah. And I think that's really, he took advantage, definitely like you guys just said, but it's almost a blessing in disguise, even though you never want anybody to be injured, to find a little bit more about your depth with that hole being open there. So now in my mind, he's kind of locked up that DH role with what he was able to do this series. He'd already kind of had it locked up to a degree. I think they'd put Jack Wagner in off and on at the DH spot. Hudson Polk DH'd a couple of times, but if Nolan Souza is going to hit like this, I mean, I don't know how you play anybody else in that DH role going forward until he goes cold. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, you play who's hot. We're going back to what you said about the blessing in disguise. I mean, obviously you never want a guy like Peyton Stovall to get hurt. Like I was almost, when I heard he fractured his foot and he was going to be out a little bit, just because I know what he's been through with his shoulder and missing the last part of last year, it almost made me sick because I was like, this dude has worked his, all the way back. He's ready to go, and then that happened. It sucks. But I'm a big believer in that everything happens for a reason. And even when Peyton was having to sit out for a little bit, a guy like Nolan Souza comes in and shows what he can do, and it makes our team better. And obviously Peyton's back now and better than ever. But I'm definitely a big believer in everything happens for a reason. It's turned out good for us.
Very true.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that I thought it was pretty funny. I saw the comment, I think one day this weekend, somebody said between Souza and Aloy, maybe we need to start sending a few more scouts out to Hawaii to, look at these Hawaiian baseball players.
Yeah, we do. There's definitely some talent out there, and we're 2 for 2 right now on it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, this was, another big series win for Arkansas. And, coming from a player's perspective, what is it like to not only, you come out and win the series, but you also sweep? What kind of, how motivational is that? How confidence building is that to not only you win the series, but also you come out and just dominate and get the sweep?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. I mean, I was talking to somebody this past weekend, and, they were saying like, well, we've already got the series. And I was like, you cannot think like that in the SEC. If you have a chance to sweep, you need to sweep. And so that was the big thing last year. If we win the first 2 games, coaches are always making sure they're like, hey, like, don't take your foot off the gas. Like, if you have a chance to sweep the SEC, you got to do it. Just because it's so hard to win this league. You're playing top teams day in and day out every weekend. So getting that sweep this week was massive.
I think it only does good things for whenever, seeding time comes around. You've got multiple different sweeps against multiple different teams, several of them being fairly highly ranked. Sweep of LSU, obviously they've had a bit of a drop off, unfortunately for them, but sweeping them, I hate LSU, man. So that was like
unfortunately for
very,
them,
very sweet.
Yeah.
So those things are good to have on your resume, I think, whenever it comes to seeding time for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like, I think last weekend too, not necessarily from our perspective, maybe an SEC perspective, but, there's some questions I think last week nationally that, a lot of people were talking about, well, should this Arkansas team necessarily be ranked number one? Some people would mention, Oregon State, the team that we beat down in Arlington, needing to be number one. But then, we come out and get the sweep over LSU. Yes, they're not last year's LSU team that won it, but they're still a pretty good LSU team. And we come out and get the sweep, and then you turn around and see Oregon State lose a series to USC that had a losing record. I think that really maybe answers some questions for some of these national people, really maybe questioning, is this Arkansas team good enough to be in that number one spot? And I think, between last weekend, this weekend, and even the midweek games, we're just coming out there performing. And even it's like you mentioned, John, I saw the post game from a little clip of Dave's post game speech after the series clinched. He said, "Hey guys, this is great. We clinched the series, but we still got work to do. We got another game in less than 12 hours. So let's get back out there and, finish the job." And, even Dave understands that. And I feel like he's a great motivator in the aspect of really understanding, if we can get the sweep, let's get it. This is, we're not, satisfied, if you will, just winning the series.
Yeah, right. And like, as we know, baseball is a hard game and it's a weird game. A lot of weird things can happen. Kind of like last year. I mean, who would have thought we would have gotten swept at Georgia? We didn't think we would, right? And it just speaks on how it's a weird game. So whenever you can get a sweep, you got to sweep.
I mean, even look at it this weekend. I saw some scores. You see, Missouri is a perfect example that, we swept them opening weekend of SEC play, and, they've been struggling, but here, they take care of business and get the series win. I think they might have swept Florida. So, a really tough team. They go down there. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, it's a weird game. A team can get hot or, get the ball rolling your way, if you will, in a few games and have success there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a prime example. Missouri's struggled a lot this year, and Florida's been top. I think they're ranked 6th or something. They go out and sweep them at home. So that's the part of, playing in the SEC. You're going to get, especially being Arkansas, you're going to get everybody's best shot. Can't take them lightly. And when you win the first 2 games, getting that sweep is huge. Well,
even too, you're looking at it being Arkansas, but also Arkansas with that number one beside your name. Even these midweek games, there's no slacking because you're going to get that team's best shot. How these midweek teams are probably coming in being like, we have one game, one opportunity, and see if we can go in and knock this number one team off. And this week it's a 2-game series with San Jose State coming in, but still, it's I've been impressed with this team in a year where the SEC has some surprising teams sitting at the top and some other teams sitting at the bottom. A team that comes to mind, you look at Kentucky, a team that, is right there at the top along with us as far as looking at their conference record. And I think that's maybe surprised some people, where you have LSU that's really struggling, this Ole Miss team that, they're usually a tough team. Both those teams are struggling, and even Auburn, where you've really got to get things turned around because you're getting into crunch time when you look at seeding, and you don't want to end up with a losing conference record.
Right. And the fact that we've been so consistent so far in terms of just taking care of business, I think it speaks volumes to not only the players but the coaches. Just help keep them motivated, stay level-headed, and take care of business. And that's what good teams do.
I think that's the one thing that's really stuck out to me that's differentiated us from even some of the other, kind of top 4 or 5 teams in the country, Clemson's, Oregon State's, is the consistency that we've had. Yeah, we haven't had a couple of those games where you come out and drop 18 runs on somebody. I mean, I don't think we've had anything that drastic like you've seen Georgia do a handful of times, things like that. But the consistency of going out there, playing good baseball, playing small ball when you need to, getting some clutch home runs when you need to, and pitching the ball phenomenally, pretty much every outing, that makes a consistent formula. And I think that's what's kind of got us where we are. And I think it's what will help us keep this trend continuing, because you're not having to kind of ride the highs and lows. You're just kind of keeping that ship even keel. And that's been exciting in my mind. I think that's how you get to Omaha and maybe to make it deep in Omaha.
Yeah, that's why this team is so fun to watch right now.
Yeah. And, speaking of taking care of business, as we flip over to the other diamond, you have Arkansas softball coming out here taking care of business against Missouri. They come back home from a big road win, series win over number 3 Georgia. I don't think they got enough credit for it, only jumping up one spot in the rankings, but you turn around here, come back home to Bogle, which has been year after year one of the more electrifying environments. I think on yesterday's game, the mid game, even though we lost it, we set yet another program record for attendance, which is insane. And I mean, it's like even the announcers call it the Courtney Deifel effect. She's been able to come in and do this program. Game 1 here, Arkansas wins 5-2. Morgan Leanstock goes all 7 for the Hogs. 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Bree Ellis, she has been a monster this year, coming over from Auburn and hasn't let off the gas at all. She started out things here in this game. 2-run home run in the first, her 13th of the season. Arkansas adds 2 more runs in the third due to a Hannah Gamble 2-out, 2 RBI single that scored Reagan Johnson and Reagan Kramer to put Arkansas up 4-0. And then who else? Rylan Hedgecock finishes things off with a solo home run in the fourth. Arkansas wins this one 5-2 to start out the series 1-0. This is big for this Arkansas team that's, kind of like we talked about with the baseball team last year, early in the season, have run into some injury issues with their pitching. And, I think it's been big for them to win that series last weekend and come out and start things off on the right foot here.
I agree with that 100%. Was this the first series we had Robin Herron come back from injury?
I believe so.
I believe it was too.
She might have pitched briefly last weekend, but it wasn't very much.
Yeah, so getting her back fully healthy, I think that's going to kind of get us right back into the situation we wanted to be in. But going back to what you said at the top, we go down there, beat Georgia number 3, and Georgia retained that number 3 spot, which blew my mind. So softball is wacky, and it throws everybody off, and there's a lot of different things that go into softball rankings than what you always imagine. But it is a good thing, even when you are able to go down, get a win against a big program like that. Even if they don't drop that much, it still looks great on your resume going forward. And I think that's going to be something huge for us later on down the line to have that to kind of circle back to. But then, man, this game 1, I thought Morgan Leanstock she's slowly kind of taken over that ace role since Robin Herron had been out with an injury. And her coming and pitching out the full 7 innings, I think was big to kind of get this series started out on the right foot.
Yeah. And then, we'll jump over here to the second game here. Arkansas falls 12-3. Not a lot to talk about in this one. Robin Herron, 3 2/3. You've seen her not go as much as what we're used to with her, as I think they're probably easing her back in from, being out with that injury. She comes off of 4 hits, 5 runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Hannah Kamsen closes it out with the final 1 1/3. 5 hits, 7 runs, 3 walks, and 1 strikeout here. Missouri jumped out to an early lead and really never looked back in this one. Arkansas, the closest they got, they cut the lead 8-3, but that was it. And so this is one of those where, you take the loss, essentially flush it and come back for the rubber match the next day. And that's what Arkansas did. In game 3 here, they won 4-1. Morgan Leanstock gets the start again here, 6 2/3, 5 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. Robin Herron finishes the final third. This game, I watched it today. It was scoreless up until the 5th. Arkansas out-hit Missouri 6-5 after that. Kylie Halverson went 2 for 3, 2 RBIs, a solo home run, and a double. You have Arkansas that was down 1-0, but thanks to home runs by Halverson and Nia Carter back-to-back, Arkansas jumped up 2-1. Hannah Gamble came in clutch, going 2 for 3 with a double and an RBI single that scored Saki, and then Halverson hit an RBI double to score Riley Cloud to put Arkansas up 4-1. And then you had Reagan Johnson go 1 for 3 with an infield single and kind of put those insurance runs up and got this closed out and wins the series here. Another, top 25 series win for the softball team. So, that's big to bounce back. And I think, like Seth said, we're kind of getting back up to speed with, those players coming back from injury and seeing what this team kind of getting towards midseason form.
I think that's a great take, and I think one of the biggest things is you had a couple different names step up here, and some of these clutch hit situations where, you maybe not have a Kennedy Miller really come out and do quite as well as she had been in the past. So I expect her to bounce back. She's been an absolutely phenomenal freshman catcher for us. But, it's good. We talked about at the beginning of the year that this team had a ton of depth and a ton of explosive potential. And so in these games like this, somebody not hitting the ball too well, but you have somebody else step up and really knock the cover off of it. And if you're able to kind of ride that balance of your lineup, you set yourself up for success. Baseball team is the same way. You've kind of seen it all year long. You'll have somebody have a really hot series the next weekend, maybe not quite as well, but you have somebody else step up really well, like a Nolan Souza, for example, this past weekend. So the softball team's kind of done a great job of emulating that. And it's resulting in, top 25 series wins in Georgia last week and Missouri this week. And I don't really know how much else you could ask for. It's been good to see, and especially good to see the fan outpouring of support, setting multiple different attendance records just this year after last year. I think we had 4 or 5 different games where they set a record, then followed it back up, set a record the next week, set a record the week after that. I mean, it just seems like the fan support has really been coming on for this group of softball girls, and that's awesome to see.
Yeah. And so, as we're ending things here with the 2 baseball and softball sports here, Arkansas baseball will take the field again in a 2-game series this week, as we mentioned, with San Jose State. Softball, no midweek series for them as they get ready for South Carolina this weekend. Baseball will hit on the road against Alabama, finally headed to, leaving bomb after their big homestand. But yeah, I'm not worried. Like we've talked about this entire show, the way this team's been performing, behind this pitching staff between Hagan, Mason, Brady, it's going to take a lot for me to, see us, struggle here. If anything, I think it's safe to say if we lose a game, it's not going to be because of our pitching.
That's probably pretty accurate. John, you want to give us kind of what your preview thoughts are going to be against Alabama?
I mean, like you said, it's kind of hard not to have full confidence that we should win every single game, because we should. But Alabama's a good SEC team. They may not have the record that we have, but baseball's weird. Anything can happen. They can get hot. They're playing at home. I mean, again, I have full confidence, but baseball's a weird game. So I'm still expecting, for us to take care of business, but you never know when you're playing a good team like Alabama.
Yeah. And, before we wrap up here, I've been keeping a close eye, and, we'll talk about it here briefly. Just within, the last, 45 minutes of, being live here doing this show, there's been a lot of steams that seem, and you can chime in here too, John, building about. It really seems like there's some, where they say there's smoke, there's fire. It really seems with the amount of smoke now, there's some fire maybe being found about Coach Calipari to Arkansas. I've been seeing numerous things about it. What magnitude or would that kind of make up for how crazy the search has been, or for what everybody's been saying, with Hunter Yurachek, how he's been, maybe slacking on this program? If he comes up and makes this hire, would this be one of those where it's like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't have doubted, AD Yurachek? Or like, how insane would it be to see Coach Cal be in Razorback Red next season?
It'd definitely be different. It's not the first name that came off of our heads when the job came open, but obviously Coach Calipari's done really well in the past. But I mean, you never know.
I'm curious to see what his buyout would be. I thought it was in the $30 million range or something insane. Well,
and that's the thing. From what I'm reading here is, and I think it's a thing. What I'm reading is Coach Cal, if he's choosing to leave, and I think this is the case, if he chooses to leave, his buyout's $0. From what I'm reading, I don't know how accurate that is, but from what I'm seeing is if he willingly leaves, that buyout, $33 million, I don't know if that comes out of his pocket or what, but I could maybe a low chance see, with how things have been done in Lexington in the past few years, a lot of people have been unhappy. He signs this big contract, 2 out of the last 3 years, he gets knocked off in the SEC or in the NCAA tournament by a very low seed. Maybe is this him kind of wanting, a fresh start, in a new place where, he's still going to carry that weight of he's Coach Cal, go out and recruit some of these guys and, bring in some top talent. I think that's been not a complaint, but a real curiosity thing for me is with the amount of talent he's had at Kentucky with as long as he's been there, to only have one title to show for it is kind of surprising to me. But with the success they've had year in and out, it sucks to lose to a lower seed, 2 out of 3 years, but every year for the most part making the tournament. Are these Kentucky fans just a little bit maybe spoiled and not understanding what we have? That's like Arkansas going out and saying, we have a bad baseball season. Oh, it's time to get rid of Dave. He's, not doing the job. But I mean, you can't expect everybody to have a good year in and year out. Like, and especially getting to that national title game, it's anything easy to do. I mean, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, that's still like you're having to go through a long season and beat a lot of good teams.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Cal wants out of Lexington. And, what better spot to go than Arkansas? Arkansas is a top job in the country right now. So for Cal, I feel like that would be a pretty ideal move. But
I can see it. I feel like the expectations here might be a little bit more realistic where, we want to make the tournaments. We want to make, Sweet 16s, Elite Eights, but potentially win one if we can. But I think Kentucky's kind of gotten restless not winning another title underneath him over the last 7 or 8 years. I think it's been since he won one. What was it, 2014 or something like that, wasn't it?
I want to say 12.
Golly, was it that far back? Man, that was a while back. Anyways, maybe there's a little bit more acceptance of just an okay title or an NCAA appearance, I mean.
He's got the pedigree for sure.
Say that again?
He's got the pedigree for sure. He's got the resume.
Oh, 100%. So I don't know. Maybe a fresh start would be good for him. It would absolutely be the weirdest thing ever seeing him in red and not blue. And frankly, I've never been a Coach Cal fan just because he's been at Kentucky since about as long as I can remember. And I've always never liked Kentucky in basketball, obviously. So it'd be very strange to try to adapt and root for him, being an Arkansas coach potentially. But
we'll see there on the flip side of that, if this is the case and he is the new basketball coach, with him coming in, do Arkansas fans get too high of expectations with, just his pedigree and like we were talking about with, what we know he can do? Are Arkansas fans going to come in and expect too much of him? Because you got to look at, as of today, you have one scholarship player on your roster with Ramon Markinass, and he's in the portal. You got Trevor in Brazil. And then yesterday you had one of the freshmen ask for his release from his letter of intent. And so now you have one 4-star freshman signed and Trevor in Brazil official on the roster that hasn't mentioned anything. There's going to be a lot of work to be done in the portal to not only recruit those guys, maybe try to keep guys that are transferring out. Maybe you go talk to Khalif Battle, you go talk to Layden Blocker, Tremont Mark, be like, hey guys, let's come back. But if that's the case, do you think, there could be maybe some unreal expectations if this is the case?
I mean, I think it's good to have high expectations. You definitely should at a basketball school like Arkansas. And Coach Cal's proven that he brings in talent every single year, especially with the NIL that we're starting to get and all of that good stuff. I think it's okay to have high expectations.
I think that's kind of the reason you would hire him, honestly. I don't know if you would really want to go out and get a name quite that big unless you did have, the expectations that he's going to come in and not necessarily turn things around, because I don't think we've been in a bad spot. We had a bad year, but we've had, pretty good basketball team these last couple of years with good results, especially at the end of the year. So being able to, bring him in and maybe get you over the hump or something would be more the mentality, I think. But I think you're right, though, John. I think if you did make a big hire of that caliber, the expectation would 100% be, you got to take this team, to the next step. Not just a Sweet 16, not just an Elite Eight. We're talking you got to get us to a Final Four in a couple of years and potentially win the whole dang thing, or this was potentially a waste even. So I think those expectations would be real, maybe warranted or not. I don't know, but I think they would definitely be there.
Yeah, I'm just ready for us to get a coach, get a name, make something official.
No kidding, man. I feel like we're getting behind the 8 ball the longer it waits, just on getting a team even for next year. It's kind of weird, but
yeah, it's one of those things where you got to think that you've only got till the end of April till the portal officially closes. And I mean, at this rate, Arkansas is going to need 11 to 12, maybe even 13 new players on its roster. So we need to get that kind of wrapped up, signed, sealed, and delivered, if you will, make that announcement and let him get to work. And then you got to think about what players, if he does decide to make his way to Arkansas, what players follow him from Kentucky. That's always a thought too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely need to go ahead and get the announcement going so we can get to work and get those players here.
I will say I think this would be a very big move by Yurichek, if with especially with all the stuff that's came out, the video last week, a lot of people were thinking at first, people were like, oh, that means Muss is back. But then that video kind of has a whole different perspective when you look at it this week with him leaving. It was kind of Yurichek was like, oh, you're still here in a sense of you haven't left yet. And then him going on the podcast and saying, well, there's no contract extension or anything like that on the table. And if Muss wants to be here, he'll be here. And then, the next day it comes out that Muss has an interview with USC, quote unquote interview. It was more or less, let's come get out here and finalize things. And then now so a lot of people are like, well, maybe Yurichek is ahead of the game playing 4D chess here. And if we land Coach Cal, that might, at the end of the day, kudos to him. That's a big move, with football bringing Bobby Petrino back, which I think blew most of the nation's mind. I think this will be right up there with it. Having Cal that's been at Kentucky for, like we've said, as long as I can remember, switching out that Kentucky blue for the Arkansas red would be, I think, send some shockwaves through the country.
Fingers crossed. I'd like to see it just to see it. I mean, it'd be so crazy. It's almost like the insane shock factor that would come with that. I mean, I'm here for it. Yeah.
And so, we'll wrap it up here, but, stay tuned. Me and Seth might be coming at you, if we do get the breaking news with this, we'll be ready to come out and talk about it, what it officially means if it actually happens. John Bolton was fantastic to join us today, talk about Arkansas baseball. Like he said, he's still big into it and doesn't miss a pitch. So, we may have to bring him back from time to time. And that's been, your Razorback recap for this weekend. And, even with all this craziness going on, like John said before the show, and we talked a little bit, don't forget you have the number one baseball team in the country. So let's go out there and support these guys.
Oh, appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you again. And so that's it for your Razorback recap. We'll see you this week for our regularly scheduled episode, unless we have some breaking news, which we could have in the next 24 to 48 hours. If so, then we might have an emergency show for you, but stay tuned.